Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. So, I have a very long article on this topic of Islam, Iman, Taqwa and Ihsan on my Tafseer website. So it goes all the verses of Holy Quran where these terms have been used. So I'm not going to go through all of those verses. It will take a lot of time. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to present the summary. And the reason we need to clarify this is because in Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned Islam, the word Islam in its original meaning, in the meaning way it was used before the revelation of Holy Quran. And some people got confused with that one, and they then claim as if that Iman is something greater and higher and better than Islam, which is against what Quran says. So I will explain you first these concepts on the basis of this diagram you can see on online. So we need to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this beautiful deen of Islam, which is deenul haqq, the deen of the truth. That's the deen, the only deen which accepts people, is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Means the way of life which is based on submission to and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all matters of our life, in all the decisions we make. So that is the way of life, that's the deen which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to live by. Now, when we are living this deen, there are two components of this deen. One is Iman, the faith, the belief. And then there is all the actions we do based on that faith. So you can see on this diagram that Islam, the deen, is made of two components. One is Iman and the other is Amal Salih. Just like in Surah Wal Asr, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that those people who will be winners, those people who will be successful on the day of judgment will be those alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. And frequently in Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions both things, amanu wa amilu salihat. So these are the two main components. One is our internal faith, our commitment, our beliefs, the realities which we believe in, and then the actions which we adopt according to our faith. So now when we live according to our faith, people can do it at different levels. So you can see here I have indicated the performance level. If we claim to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we claim to believe in all the articles of faith, and we claim to believe that we are Muslims, we live according to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then if we are not meeting the standard according to which we'll be behaving or we should be behaving, that is called nifaq. And those people who don't, they claim to be believing and acting according to Islam, and they claim to be Muslims, but their actions and lifestyle is not reflective of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then those are the one who are called munafiq, and they are practicing nifaq. That's the lowest level. of faith, that when a person claims to be having faith, but their actions are against the faith. Now, let's look at the highest level, which is ihsan. Ihsan is that the most excellent level of faith, where you try to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the most excellent manner. That's ihsan. That whatever is required, you want to do more than that. Whatever level Allah wants us, you want to do more than that. So that is the most excellent level. And in between all levels are the levels of taqwa. Taqwa is where we try to maximize the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and avoid anything which will be displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it can be at beginner level or up to the ihsan level, but you can see the relationship. So Islam is our way of life, which is comprising of Iman, which is our faith, and then our living according that Iman, according to the deen of Islam, which may be, some people may claim to be believers, but they are not true believers because their lifestyle is indicating that they are not practicing Islam properly. And or it can be at taqwa level, or it can be, which is the most level which will be most people be practicing at, but special people of those who are most dedicated, they would try their best to perform and live according to Islam at the most excellent manner, and that's ihsan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ دِينًا مِمَّنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ. That who can be better than the person who says that I am Muslim, I practice Islam, and then he practices at the most excellent, وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ, that he practices at the most excellent manner. So you can, this is showing you in summary the relationship between these concepts. If you want to relate it to Surah Al-Asr, which I usually talk about, then you can see that those actions, they can be one's personal actions, which we do in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or then they can be tawasaw bil haqq, where we do mutual exhortation of haqq and mutual exhortation of sabr, wa tawasaw bis sabr. So it just clarifies those concepts. You can see that saying that, oh, Iman is something higher than Islam is not a proper concept or a proper view, because Islam is the deen which has, Iman is a component of that deen. And actions are also, living according to Islam is also component of deen. So this is the summary, that Islam is the deen, faith is the first step towards Islam. So a Muslim is a person who lives by and practices Islam as it should be practiced with obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The practice can be at minimum level of taqwa to the highest level of excellence, which is ihsan. So Iman is the first step towards Islam. A mu'min is a person who believes in Islam and has decided to adopt and practice Islam. The words related to Iman, especially the phrase who have believed, had been used for all claimants of faith in Holy Quran, both those who are sincere in their faith and those who are deficient in their faith. And so the minimum level of practice is acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that qualifies a person to be called a Muslim, is the level of taqwa, where the focus is on avoiding any behavior disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a person with a lifestyle not guided by taqwa is considered hypocrite in Allah's books. And the desired level of practice is ihsan, which we should all strive for, where the believer strives to excel in maximizing the prayer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the summary I have presented in front of you. And behind that, there are many, many verses. But before I go to those, some of those verses, I just want to clarify that how the verse in Surah Al-Hujurat, where Allah SWT mentions about Al-A'rab, that they say that we have believed, but Allah says, La tukulu qalati al-a'rabu amanna kul la tuminu walakin kulu aslamna. So from that, people think that, oh, perhaps belief is something real and Islam is something unreal. That's not true. And I'll explain you why. What do I have in my hand? What do you call it? Mouse. But what is the real meaning of a mouse? A mouse, it's a small animal which is a pest and we don't want to see it in our homes or anywhere, right? But we have started using it as a mouse. It doesn't mean that now mouse has lost its true meaning, which it was original meaning. It is still there. The context will indicate whether, when we use the word English word mouse, whether we mean the living mouse or we mean computer mouse. So if I say, oh, the battery has ran out of my mouse, you will understand I'm talking about computer mouse. But if I say, oh, there are too many mice in the park I saw, then you will understand that we are talking about the living mouse. In the same manner, before Holy Quran started using these terms like Islam and Iman and Taqwa and Ihsan and all these kind of terminology, they were Arabic words, they had their meanings. But Holy Quran used them in a special Islamic terminology. So what Islam means? Islam means submission. Somebody who is obedient and who obeys people, that person has become obedient. Now, a person could be forced to obey and he may have become obedient in that manner. So, in this situation, in Surah Al-Hujurat, this was a special situation where Islam has been used in its original meaning, not in the Islamic terminology, which is that a person who sincerely, with proper faith, submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and wants to live by Islam. Okay? That's the Islamic terminology, but just submitting was original meaning. So, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave success to the mission of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was calling people to Islam, that they become true Muslims, so that they have the faith and they also live according to that faith. At that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave power to Islam. Islam was powerful and people started coming and accepting the domination of Islam. Some tribes were in that category. They had not really truly believed. They had not truly adopted Islam. But they claimed that they had just submitted to the power of Islam. So Allah mentioned that situation. But people started thinking that, oh, perhaps Iman is the real thing and Islam is something you just because you are doing under pressure. No, that's not true. And as I explained to you, Islam is the deen which has, Iman is a component of that deen, as are actions of people a component of that deen. And I'll give you some examples before I conclude. See, in Holy Quran, if you see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used, even when talking to hypocrites who has munafiq, they have nifaq. Even then Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, those people who you claim to believe. For example, in Surah Nisa, Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu bima anzalna. So that, oh, believe, you who claim to believe, believe truly, aminu. But Allah has never used this, the Islamic terminology, in that manner. Islam, the word Islam has always been used for the people who have truly accepted Islam as their deen, with having true faith, and their actions are also being according to the deen of Islam. So, for example, I'll quote you these verses. First about Islam. Here. See, for example, Allah says, Inna deena inda Allahi Islam. That the only deen Allah recognizes, the way of life, is Islam. وَمَا اخْتَلَفَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سَرِيعُ الْحِسَابِ. That those people who are given the book, they started differing with Islam. They deviated from Islam only after the knowledge had come to them. And then you see Allah says, وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ, that whoever disbelieves in the verses, in the revelations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they should know, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سَرِيعُ الْحِسَابِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swift in reckoning, holding people accountable. Allah says, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati bi ni'mati wa raditu lakumul islam dina. That by now, today, I have completed, perfected to you your deen. I have perfected for you your deen and completed my favor on you and approved Islam as the deen for you. And Islam is what is required of people. And says, فَإِنْ حَاجُّوكَ فَقُلْ أَسْلَمْتُ وَجْهِيَ لِلَّهِ وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِ. That if those people who don't accept Islam, they argue with you, you say that I have submitted myself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also those people have submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who follow me. So, قُلْ لِلَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ وَالْأُمِّيِّينَ. So, tell those people of the book and the pagans, or the Jews and non-Jews, whoever are non-Muslims, tell them, Aslamtu, do you accept Islam? فَإِنْ أَسْلَمُوا, if they accept Islam, فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا, then they have found the guidance. وَإِنْ تَوَلَّوْا, if they turn away, فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ, then you have the only responsibility to deliver the message. وَاللَّهُ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala watches His slaves, He knows who is doing what, and He is going to hold them accountable. So there are many, many verses which will indicate these aspects. But I want to, for example, I'll mention few of them. قُلْ إِنَّا, in Surah Al-An'am, إِنَّا صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. That this is giving the proper spirit of Islam. What is Islam? That is Islam, the level of Islam which is required of us is Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. That my acts of worship, my acts of sacrifice and performance of rituals, my living and my dying, everything is purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, exclusively for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has no partner. And this is what I am commanded, وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and I am the first one to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can imagine, this is not, Allah is not talking about something which is lower without Iman. Rather, it's talking about Islam, which is Iman and practice both according to the deen of Islam. And just to keep it brief, I can, as you can see, that I have all these verses which, in this respect, I just want to quote you from Surah Safat, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was mentioning about the greatest sacrifice ever done, offered for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not done, but offered to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sacrifice of Ismail alayhi salam by Ibrahim alayhi salam. And what did Allah say there? فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا وَتَلَّهُ لِلْجَبِينَ. When both of them submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as they should be submitting, as they should be practicing Islam, obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can imagine, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala present Ibrahim alayhi salam in Holy Quran? It presents as ideal Muslim. When Ibrahim and Ismail were constructing Holy Kaaba, when they were making dua, what were they saying? Rabbana waj'alna muslimayni laka wa min dhurriyyatina ummatun muslimatan lak. Then make us Muslim. Would they be asking for something which is something inferior? No. Because Islam is complete way of life which includes faith as well as actions and behavior. So I just wanted to clarify this, because many times people stand up here even in our masjid and they say, oh, Iman is greater and Islam is inferior. No. Islam is the deen which has components Iman and Amal Salih. And we should be clear about that. If there are any questions, I can discuss. Yes, brother. Uh-huh.
He said, while we are sitting with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there is a man who came from out. You know that hadith.
Mm-hmm.
He explained about the three levels of Iman and Islam and Iman and Ihsan. Why you didn't use this hadith? Explain the situation you talked about.
Okay. I will explain that. But let's just first discuss a matter of principle. The matter of principle is, when Quran is clear on something, we don't go to hadith, because Quran takes precedence over everything. As a matter of principle, we should understand that. Number one. Number two, that hadith of Jibreel, does not give us the levels. It is just it is just explaining the same concepts which I have explained. That mal iman. Iman is believing in these things. Let me finish. Iman is this. What is Islam? Islam is that you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely. What is Ihsan? Is the most excellent level. Just like the way I have explained. So this explanation is not against that hadith. Okay? Rather, that hadith is saying the same thing.
I didn't say it's against, but it's clarify how Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained he gave us a summative about the Islam and Iman and
Yeah. Okay. Oh no, I'm not ignoring. Actually, it is mentioned in my article. Because, as I mentioned, the article is quite long and I didn't want to go over everything, so I just gave you the summary. Okay? Any other question, comment? Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.